Okay, good afternoon to everybody in Canada. I have a special guest from Canada today on the Packard Network Live, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. And good afternoon to those of you, obviously, in the U.S., and good evening to those of you in Europe. I know that a few of you are tuning in to that as well, and some of my friends in Zambia. Africa, where I had the pleasure to spend a year of my life living in your great country. So great to have you here. I have a very special guest today, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to introduce her. She's got a lot of great credentials, and we have Vergia Davidson from Ottawa, Canada, here live as well. Vergia, welcome to the program.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, great. And Vergia is the founder and CEO of Strive. That's STRIVE. And she'll talk a bit about that, but that's a mental health, wellness, and empowerment. She's a registered psychotherapist, a certified Canadian counselor, a psychometrist, and a project manager. And for the last 10 years, she's basically been making a difference in impacting people. And we're going to talk a bit about what that is through psychoeducation, counseling, strategy development, just a whole spectrum of things. It's very broad. We were talking just a minute ago before the show about how broad her field of expertise is. And Vergia graduated from the University of Ottawa, St. Paul University in 2012, and with an MA in counseling. And after graduating, she became a registered psychotherapist and completed an MSc in project management from the University of Salford in the UK in 2020. And she has done a lot of great things in terms of co-creating a lot of programs in the community around mental health. We'll talk about some of those, and basically we'll also talk about her purpose. And I'm not going to steal the thunder on that for her, because she's worked very hard in that field. So we'll talk a bit about that. But I'm going to take a breath here. Vergia, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so very much. It's really an honor.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I'd like to those of you that are tuning in live, please let us know where you're at in the comments. That would be great, and we'd love to engage with you as our conversation goes on. So if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, or anything in the area of success, mental health, anything that you'd like to know from either of us during the program, please put that in the comments as well, and we'll be sure to address your questions. And for those of you that are seeing this on the replay, that a lot of you in Asia will be seeing this on the replay, please do put in questions and comments, and Vergia and I will make sure that we get to those even after we're not live on this as well, and we're happy to engage with you. So Vergia, welcome to the program. I'll just pause here and say good afternoon to you on a Friday, and it's I'd really like to welcome you to the program, and if I missed anything in the intro that you'd like to bring up, feel free to do so as well.
Awesome. No, you did a great job, and I'm just so happy to be here. And if it's okay, I can just talk a little bit about my passion and why I'm here, if that's okay.
Yes, definitely.
So,
Go ahead. Yep.
Awesome. So, growing up, I had a lot of challenges around mental health, and I didn't even know that it was a mental health issue. I just thought this was just kind of the way life was. And as I got older, I was connected with different people, and I was blown away at how much support there is out there. And it really made a difference. I felt like I was able to finally live freely and deal with a lot of the challenges and the hurdles that I had in my previous years. So now I have dedicated my life to helping others to know that they're not alone. And when we take good care of our mental health, we're able to be productive. We're able to enjoy the things we do, but also we don't shy away from learning and growing. And it doesn't become such a dread when we make mistakes.
Mm, right. Definitely. How did you, if we could just take a step back for a moment, and if you could kind of walk us through, did you, when you were growing up, did you ever imagine that you'd be doing what you're doing now, or did you design it? Or talk a little bit more specifically. A lot of viewers like to know, how did you wind up where you're at today?
It's a good question. Definitely, I did not envision this because growing up, I had a lot of anxiety. So I basically was afraid of everybody and I was afraid to basically even think out loud. So definitely I did not vision myself like this. So how did I become in this position? Well, I have to say there was a lot of hard work, and I'm somebody who really believes in hard work and making sure that you position yourself. And sometimes things happen just on accident. So for me, I've been working in the field for 10 years, counseling, and it just so happened that a friend of mine, her guest speaker on mental health, happened to cancel about 2 weeks before the event. And she's like, Vergia, please help me out. And I'm like, I'm not sure this is in my wheelhouse. And she's like, no, you do this all the time. You do this naturally. And I was like, okay. So, long story short, they invited me. I loved it. The questions were amazing. And they kept on asking, okay, can you come for this? Can you come for that? And they're like, do you have a company? And I'm like, no. They're like, you should do that because you're really good at this. And I'm like, hmm. So, as I said, it's really about the positioning and doing the work that sometimes might not look glamorous.
Mhm.
But loving what I do really made the difference. And it's through those connections and collaborating and getting feedback from people that are way ahead of me that's been doing this. And they're like, yeah, do this, do that, do that. And that's basically how I design Strive. I design Strive by asking employers what they need in the workplace in terms of mental
Mm,
health.
mhm.
And a lot of them were like, we don't really have a specific strategy or framework when it comes to mental health, or there are difficult conversations out there, but I'm not an expert in the field of mental health. So can you come in and talk about it, or can you train us on a specific topic?
Mm.
So that's basically the backstory of Strive. But I've been doing all this behind the scene for 10 years. But in the last year and so, I've really brought the skills and the services to the next level.
Mhm. Definitely. And so did the pandemic have anything to do with the journey you're talking about for you?
Oh, yes. The
Mm,
pandemic, there's a lot of things that happened that were unfortunate. And there were also things that were eye opening. That was eye opening to me. So in the pandemic, it just allowed me to sit, pause, and reevaluate my life to see how can I make a bigger impact, because there's so
mhm.
many people struggling in silence, and we can do so much more.
Yeah, definitely. So I get approached all the time with people that are experiencing anxiety, stress, depression, bipolar, you name it. There's a whole burnout. I know that that you can speak about burnout as well, and that's happening. The Great Resignation's happening, and a lot of that's related to maybe a combination of poor leadership, some mental health issues, some lack of understanding around what a person might be going through, a single mother, a married mother that maybe has an employer that doesn't understand the strains of daycare for their children. All different kinds of things that probably have always existed, but now they're really coming to light. And the pandemic brought a lot of that stuff to the top of the water.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
um, just we've got a few people on here. I want to just acknowledge Joe. Joe is here. Joe Gonzalez from Florida is here. We have Forrest Bivens from Canada as well. So we've got these folks here. We've got, I think, Addison Amelia from Newcastle in the UK is with us live. We have Regina Hutchings from Philadelphia here as well. And I'm not sure if Marcus, if you're on here, if this is before, from Johannesburg, South Africa, and Sandra Duarte from Australia is here as well. So that's great to have. If you all have any questions, please tee those up for Vergia, and I will be happy to do that. Vergia, while we're waiting for them to tee up anything to ask you, I've got a question around how you yourself have dealt with obstacles. I'm sure your success in the journey you just described was not linear in nature. It's never linear for any of us. And I was just curious if you could just talk to us for just a moment about how, when you see an obstacle or a barrier kind of get in the way, it could be anything you want. You could give us any example. And how do you deal with that? And how would you recommend that others deal with obstacles as they come up?
That's a great question. And obstacles could be so many different things. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the obstacles that I've dealt with is self-doubt. When you think, I need to know a little bit more, I need to consistently check because I want to make sure I'm right. I want to make sure I have it perfectly. And that was a challenge for me because it really stunted my growth because I didn't want to make mistakes. I was so cautious. I was almost to the point where I was frozen because I was like, it's better not to do anything and, not mess anything up than to take a step and fall flat on your face and get back up. So one of the things that really helped me out is, one, having the people around me to support me, having mentors, because the
Mm-hmm.
mentors in my life, they really took the time to encourage me, and I was open enough to share some of my, my downfalls or my weaknesses, and they were able to talk me through and even when I wasn't sure, it helped me to face the fear and know
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lesson there. So moving from a mindset that doesn't is not flexible to being flexible to more of a growth mindset. So for me, when there's an obstacle, I look at it as, yes, I'm scared, yes, I'm nervous, but what's on the other side there? What can I learn about myself? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
scared and I'm terrified, who can I access? Who can I talk to about it? So I no longer look at things as I'm on my own or I need to have all the answers to every single question. It's more, you know what? Life is a journey. I'm going to mess up sometimes. That's okay. But it doesn't really benefit me if I am so crippled in the fear that I'm not doing the best that I could do.
Mm-hmm. And it's what I'm hearing from you also. It's okay to ask for help, right? And to
Mm,
seek that help. But yet I find anyway that there's an enormous number of people that are just hesitant to do that for a variety of reasons, right? So I think male and female are a bit different. There are reasons for, maybe not asking and embracing help. And do you run across that with clients and people that you work with as well?
Constantly,
Mm,
constantly. A lot of people that need the help, but then they don't get the help. And there could be
right.
so many reasons, and I'll list some, but it doesn't mean that these are all the reasons. Sometimes
Mm,
it's embarrassment. Sometimes it's they might not know the gravity of the situation. They might actually just not know what change could look like, or even they might not have a specific relationship with someone that they've seen struggle and seen them actually overcome. So this is why it's so important for us to be honest and authentic. Because when we share our journey of struggling, like especially like for example, me with anxiety, others then see that, hey, you struggle with anxiety and you're doing this. How is that possible? So when we
mm,
model success, other people can actually see it. And it's really important that you're gentle with the people around you, because it's scary sometimes. It's scary to know
mm,
that you're struggling. It's scary to have to put yourself out there. So build a relationship with the person. Relationship first. If you don't have a relationship with someone, I wouldn't say, to encourage them to get the help. Maybe there's someone else that's closer to them that they might hear or they might listen. And then the other thing is, you never know when change is going to happen. Change is a process. So you might deposit a seed today, 6 months later, they might realize that, hey, so and so said this, maybe I should do this. So when we take that pressure away from, I'm telling you that maybe you should get help, and the person needs to get it like within 24 hours or the week, then we actually allow them to express themselves. We allow them to take the time to figure out why, and
Mm-hmm.
the person that's supporting them, be aware of the supports that are out there, whether it's at work or whether it's in the community, because the more you know about the resources is the more you can kind of slip it in there without condemnation or without, just really being hard on them, because you don't know what the person has gone through. And
Right.
at least, yeah, it could be a lot, but you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. So it's important that we just don't go in judgment, and we're just there for our neighbors, because we never know when they'll need it.
I think you're right. I think a lot of people do tend to, it might be part of it might be human nature. They tend to, um, um, it's not malicious, but they tend to feel like they know what somebody's going through. And again, they usually wind up having no idea what the person's actually dealing with, right? And what might be causing the discomfort, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, whatever it might be, right? And so I think one of the key things that I found that's important, and I think you just validated that, is that don't, if you're engaging with somebody that appears to have a problem, don't pretend to know all about it, because you probably have no idea what that person's actually going through when they put their head on their pillow at night, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah.
being a therapist, I hear a lot of stories. I hear a lot of the behind the scenes things. And
Mm.
sometimes our reactions have a lasting impact on the person. So this is why I'm saying it's important to be gentle, and it's a skill. It's a skill to be able to listen without trying to solve, listen and supporting the person and saying, okay, what do you need from me right now? How can I support you?
Mhm.
I noticed that, you're going through a hard time, or maybe you might not want to talk about it, but what do you need from me? Because that's really the key. If the person says, hey, I need space, then give them the space. If they say, okay, maybe I need this, that's when you can actually get the most effective approach, is really just by asking.
Mhm. Definitely. So good. Vergia, I'm going to go back over here to the live audience on LinkedIn to start with. And Forrest has a question here. He says, Vergia, you mentioned earlier about learning from those that are further down the road than you. Can you speak on your experiences on being a mentor and a mentee?
Yes, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So, mentee, well, I have definitely I'm still in mentorship right now. So, at the beginning of just being mentored by, she's an amazing psychologist, and she's just amazing. At the beginning, I was a little bit intimidated because she sees kind of the bird's eye view. I bring the concern and I'm like, hey, that. And she's like, wait, have you considered this? So it
Mm.
ended up being a lot of self reflection on my part, and knowing my motives to why I'm doing what I do. And then once I understand the why, acting from a place of strength, and
Mhm.
being mentored by someone, they also give you the resources sometimes that you might not have access to. So it's been an amazing experience, and this is just one, but there's so many people that's just been in my life and touched me in so many different ways. So you see me, but really behind me, there's like 10 or 12 people
Right.
lifting me up every day.
Hmm.
So it's a great feeling, but also it's a scary feeling too, because you're being vulnerable, you are sharing your weaknesses, and you might not always get the answer that you're looking for. Right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. People in any particular life, mine included, everybody's, there's always other people behind the scenes, right? That might not be visible to everybody else, that is actually lifting us all up. And I think you raise a great point, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And some people choose to communicate it, and other people just choose to carry on. But I think the point is, it's very difficult to live a happy and, what should I say, achieve peace of mind by yourself. It's just life is
exactly.
too challenging to do that, right? So
Yeah. And my brain is really special because I have a gift of complicating things. So my mentor always says, just keep it simple. It's really not that complicated. So that's
Mm,
really a benefit for me. And in terms of mentoring others, I do volunteer a lot in the community. So there are people in the younger generation that'll take time, when they're struggling, to call them to see how they're doing.
mhm.
And it's not like an official title, because sometimes when when youth or teens hear of an official title, they're like, are you trying to be my parent or something?
Right.
But it's just taking the time to be there and being accessible. So for me, it's having that servant mentality, that
Mhm.
anyone that comes your way, if I can do something to help them, then I unintentionally become their mentor, you know?
Right,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So it's been amazing. Sometimes it's been challenging because
Mhm.
not every relationship works. And
Right.
sometimes one is just has a different style and it gels with you, and another might not gel with you. So that's something in my mentoring others that I realize that, oh, don't take it personally, Virgia. if
Mhm.
they don't want to listen, maybe they're not in the framework right now to listen, or the headspace. And then also there might be things that you can learn from them. Or am I listening? Am I just, saying I know everything? Am I acting from a place of pride, or am I acting from a place of humility, of,
Mm,
oh, this is
mm.
really what you're going through. All right, let me pivot. Let me try this with you. Even if you
Right.
might not appreciate it right now, I'm still doing my best to help you.
Mhm. And another reason, just listening to what you're saying here, another reason that none of us should ever judge another person, right? And oftentimes this comes up as a subject, and we talk about, well, who am I to judge what you were like, right? And maybe I can judge myself, right? But why should I ever judge another person? Because not understanding what they're going through, or understanding the circumstances, and it could be very short term, right? Could be something that, if somebody judges somebody, and let's say that they're totally wrong about that, well, the person doing that might just write them off completely, and might just say, forget that person, I'm never going to talk to that person again. And how wrong could they be about that, right?
I totally agree. And I'm listening to our conversation and I'm wondering if listeners are like, have you always been like this? I haven't always been like this.
Neither have I.
I struggled a lot with judging others.
Hmm.
And as I said, I have this analytic mind, and if I'm not careful, I'll analyze things to death, or I will for sure say, no, this needs to be this needs to be that. But it really takes, as I said, like the mentors around you, the people around you, to help you keep yourself in check, and now when judgment appears or an assumption appears, being open to say, hey, that's not okay. Right. So just wanted to put that out there in case someone's listening and they're like, wow, you seem to
Mm.
have this easy, but no, this was not something that came easy. It came with practice and really being vulnerable, and hearing some
Hmm.
harsh words sometimes, but being willing to listen.
Yeah, basics, you talked about keeping things simple, simplifying things. And I operate that now too. It wasn't always that way though. We learn these things as we mature and live our best life, right? That we'd like to live. And, circles, right? Circles, straight lines, the circle of people that we put around us, right? A lot of people think of the circle as, okay, these are people that I trust, and these are my closest friends. And then these are my not quite as close friends, et cetera. And they think of it that way. But you're talking about an even different kind of circle, right? Is it from a mentor? A mentor can be very different than just friends, right? And so I think that it really pays to talk to professionals like yourself that have seen many different people in different situations to explain, because I think on this program you've explained mentor quite differently than I've interpreted it before, right? Because I interpret it more from a corporate perspective and a career management, that type of thing as well. But you've explained it, that a mentor from a life and living perspective, right? That somebody can embrace and should look to basically acquire a team of mentors to help elevate them. And that's a big learning that I have in this program as well. So that's
Yeah.
great, Vergia. Um,
Yeah.
we have Gary from Birmingham in the UK here, and Gary says obstacles are often doorways to possibilities.
Yes.
I'd agree with that. Would you, Vergia?
Oh, yeah. Strive
Yeah.
is exactly what that is. The obstacle was my fear. I faced the fear, and the
Yeah.
opportunity was endless. Right. So,
Right. And look where
yeah.
you are now. You're
Mhm.
living this now. Let's see here. We have Penny Homeland, and she's saying wonderful topic. Thanks. Thank you, Penny, for tuning in. And Forrest is thanking you for that. We have Joe, who has said self-acceptance is an initial step. So self-acceptance. Let's talk about Joe's point a little bit there, Vergia. Do you find that people have difficulty with self-acceptance? What do you find when you are dealing with some of your clients, for example?
Yeah, self-acceptance is a lifelong journey because you're going to learn different things about yourself along the way. But I do agree that you need to first step back and ask yourself what you believe, because what you believe about yourself is what you'll do or what you'll think or how your emotions will follow. So accepting yourself is really taking that time to say, okay, what do I believe about myself? What what do I stand on in terms of my confidence? And the more you ask yourself what you believe and answer it in truth, is the more you'll begin to accept yourself. And when you accept yourself in terms of the highs and the lows, it's the more
Mm.
that you can make decisions from a place of confidence. And especially when we're in the workplace, there are many people that have different challenges, and maybe you might not notice that they're struggling with just being comfortable in their own skin. So when you
Mm.
say something or there's a reaction, there's a trigger somewhere. So if we want to avoid some of the triggers, we need to take the time to accept who we are, but also be open enough to, as we talked about before, get the help that we need. For
Mhm.
me, and bringing it back to the business world, yes, I wanted to go in business, but there were a lot of people along the way. I hired a business coach. I hired a LinkedIn optimizer. I hired a branding coach. I hired a lead, like so many people along the way. So I had to accept that, hey, I'm learning something new. How do
Right.
I leverage this? Right. So acceptance is really important because
I
then you
think
can
that's
accept
great.
others.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you've just this conversation is great for me as well, I'm learning from you, right? And you just triggered something that I talk and write a lot about. My 30 years working across 30 countries, a lot about diversity, but I talk about diversity, and it's not just race, not just gender, not just ethnicity, but all diversity, all of that and more. And what's interesting is that I had a bit of a unique opportunity, Vergia, to work in different countries across 30 countries, 30 years, where I was the minority person in the room, both from no matter how you cut it, right? And I developed a kind of a different view of diversity, that I believe that the more diverse people that we surround ourselves with, so getting back to your circles concept, that I believe that we can learn the truth faster that way. And people say, well, what does that have to do with truth, right? And and I'll just give an example here, and I'm interested in your view on this, because this to me anyway, I have a belief that this is the solution to improving diversity worldwide. And that is, Vergia, that why the truth? Well, if I hire people just like myself, then they're more likely to tell me what I want to hear. So they're more likely to say, and if there's bad news on the horizon, they're likely to maybe withhold that from me, maybe not, maybe kind of distort it a little bit, because they might be afraid that I'm going to overreact or something like that. And we don't want to bring the boss bad news. But my experience always told me that the more diverse people that I have around me, that's completely gone, and people won't withhold anything, and people will tell you the truth. And now I, as a leader, had to have the tough enough skin to take that, where they're going to tell me something I don't want to hear. Well, Brett, we have a lawsuit coming in a remote part of a Southern Africa country. Okay, well, that's not the best news in the world. So how are we going to deal with that? So how I respond to that becomes very critical. If I get angry, then the person might not bring me news again in the future like that. But if I'm accepting that way, what I've learned, this just being one example, that you get to the truth so much faster the more diverse the people are around you. And I have the view that diversity is the fastest way and most sustainable way to long-term profits. Instead of trying to meet a target for hiring this many women and, trying to, improve your pie chart on ethnicity, diversity, and that kind of thing. To me, all of that should be thrown out the window. And we need to instead focus on the culture of actually what do leaders need to do, okay, instead of the HR department. That's also a fundamental difference. I don't believe that HR is a solution to this problem, but what do leaders need to be armed up with from a cultural perspective to really lever the power and the goodness that comes from diversity? Anyway, I didn't want to steal the thunder here, but what do you think of this from your perspective, being a professional that you are?
So when I think about leadership is an unnatural act, right? Because you are constantly being placed in situations that will bring up your insecurity. So because,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah.
So because it's so unnatural, we need as leaders to do the work for ourselves, so then we can see that feedback as a help. We won't be triggered by that feedback. And you mentioned, if you get angry, the person most likely won't get back to you, or you probably won't hear that person. So what you're talking about from my perspective is psychological safety. So psychological safety is the ability for employees or the team for them to speak up without the worry that the leader is going to penalize them, or that there'll be some consequence for being who they are.
Right.
So I strongly believe in, if a leader takes the time to deal with their insecurities and do the work, then when those things come up, yeah, it might not feel good all the time, but then
Mm.
you're able to step back and say, hey, can I hear this from you? This pushes me to a different way of thinking. So I do believe that we do need people that are not like us, because it's going to challenge us to go
Yep.
places that we've never been before.
Right. Creativity, everything that you need in business to actually, that you wind up doing anyway, happens much faster and much more naturally when you have this type of mindset and culture around you as well. So it's an interesting thing. It's been worked incredibly well for me, over the years as well. So so that's great. So thanks for that. Let's see. Let me just get back here. I want to make sure we're engaging well with those of you tuning in. Please tee up any other questions that you have here. Forrest says, analytics can rush to judgment so easily when you have analytics, and that's very true, actually. So I agree with that. Joe talks about diversity as a mindset. Self-acceptance is an initial step. Let's talk a bit about self-esteem, if we could, which is a little different than self-acceptance. I would imagine that you deal with a lot of self-esteem issues in what you do.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it comes out in ways that you wouldn't notice, right? It comes out in second guessing. It comes out in maybe someone speaking over someone, or feeling like they can't hold two opinions at the same time. So in the workplace, it looks a little bit different, So if you're not keen on that, if you're not aware, you'd be like, oh, this person is very rigid in what they do, or this person is acting in this way. So it really stems from self-esteem, because if you're comfortable with yourself, then you don't look at others as competition. You're able to accept them for who they are. So when we talk about self-esteem, it's something that I've struggled with in the past, and I'm still working towards that, in terms of just standing in my truth, standing in my confidence. Because when we don't, then we just kind of look at others as a measuring stick, and we get triggered everywhere.
I think you're right about that. And a weak or insecure, maybe I should say insecure self-image can translate to a lot of frustration in somebody's life. And I think my experience is, you're right. It requires constant work and maintenance. It's really no different than some people take better care of their car engine than they do their self-image, right? Yeah. And get the oil changed. And a lot of times we need to invest in cultivating our self-image as well. So that's an important point. Got a question here. How do I deal with somebody telling me what to do? Okay, so somebody that has a mental health issue, let's say it's anxiety, let's say it's bipolar, for example, and the person kind of knows that they need some help, but they've got people all around them telling them what to do. You need to go get some medication. You need to go see a doctor. You need to quit your job. So they've got all these different people that don't understand the situation, right? That are around them in their life. Their family, they could be family members, right? And they're just constantly hammering at the person, telling them what to do. And it actually is causing more damage than creating good. What would your advice be to in this case, the person with the mental health issue, on how to handle all of these opinions coming their way?
So first of all, I just want to say, it's not easy. having
Mm,
everyone try to direct your life. So I could definitely appreciate how challenging that could be. And at the same time, I would encourage that person to seek professional help because,
mhm,
especially if this noise is constant, it's going to impact how you interact with them, how you see the people around you. So take the time to maybe talk to a professional about maybe what it's triggering in you, because I don't know, this person, so I don't want to give a blanket solution to maybe a unique concern. So
mm,
once we take the step to talk with a professional, then we can see, okay, what are those trigger points that are triggering me? What makes it hard for me to tune out this noise? Do I need to learn to be assertive? How do I communicate my feelings? How do I set the boundaries? Am I a part of the solution or am I part of the problem? So these are all questions that it takes time to explore.
mm,
Because yes, we can look at it in the surface as, yeah, stop talking to this person, but okay, what is the behavior saying? What is the thought saying? Are you at a low place right now that other people are seeing this? Or are you okay, but then they're holding maybe your past against you because they're worried that maybe it will come again? Because when we talk about bipolar, right, it's that imbalance of mood. So there's automatically those swings without medication. So I would say get the
mm.
support, talk about it so then you can plan for that success.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a tricky situation, right? Where you've got, in this case, family members. Let's say in the case of bipolar, you've got family members around that want to help, but at the same time, they're either frustrated or something's happening, and they're just constantly, they're getting to the point where they're telling the person what to do, and the person's saying, I need space, right? Just leave me alone. So in this particular case, Vergia, I'm sure you hear this all the time, is that it's like the families wants to help, but they're actually maybe causing more damage than good, right? And so I think the advice you just gave is incredibly powerful. Um, but your advice to the family members that are doing this, by the way, that again have a good intention, but they're actually making it
Okay.
worse, is what? Back off.
I would say understand your why. Understand your why, because if
Yeah.
I just say back off, it's going to be a cycle. It's going to come again and again.
Yeah.
Maybe the person, you might not say anything, but then each time it comes, it gets bigger and bigger, that
Mm,
aggression, right? Rather than being assertive and saying, what you need, it might turn into aggressiveness, because it's like, you're not listening to me. I've been telling you this for 3 years and you're not listening, kind of thing. So I would ask the person, okay, what is it that is triggering you the same thing when this person's not listening? And are you like, do you feel that you are the only solution for this person to get the help that they need? Because sometimes if we feel like we are the ones responsible for the person to feel better, then that's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on us. So if we
right.
kind of step back in a way of, okay, am I the only one to help this person out? Or, okay, maybe I'm a part of the problem by being so aggressive in my stance that the person just no longer wants to hear. So I would
Mm,
say, ask yourself the why behind your behavior. And if you're not sure, talk to someone that you trust that can tell you the truth about what's going on. And take breaks. Don't be afraid to take breaks. If you're noticing that this is a lot for you, set your boundaries.
mm,
Because if you don't set your boundaries, then you take on that responsibility, you take on that role of solving the person's problem. And then when you take on that role, you're taking that person's agency away. Because the goal is really to
mm.
help them to stand on their own 2 feet. They might need help right now, but what you're doing, is it helpful? Is it part of the solution or a part of the problem?
Right. Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. Let's shift just a little bit to burnout. You deal with a lot of people that are experiencing burnout.
Yes, I have definitely in
Yeah.
the past, and a lot of organizations that I train, they're dealing with a lot of burnout and employees just feeling really disengaged from their work. for
Mm.
sure.
So what are you, let's talk currently in the current economy, 2022. What are you seeing as the major cause of burnout, say over the past 12 months?
Lack of boundaries.
Okay.
The line between the workday ending and starting is just very blurred. And
Oh,
because
mhm.
we are constantly, around the computer, we have access 24/7. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and not sticking to routine. When we're home, we're like, oh, I can get to it. But when we're going into work, we have a hard start and a hard stop. So are we actually creating that physical boundary? And then are we actually taking the time to get out, to interact with people? Now the restrictions are like a lot looser. So are we actually incorporating that in the workday? Because if you think about it,
Right.
when you're in the office, your colleague walks up to you, hey, how you doing? You take an impromptu break, you don't even know it,
Right.
or right, you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, I have to get back to this so and so thing. And but when we're working from home, or when we have so much access, we don't have that physical boundary. So
Mm.
taking care of ourselves becomes more of an intentional process. So I would say, what are the things that you really do love to do in your life,
Mhm.
and schedule those things. If you have a problem with taking breaks, because some people might say, I can get so much work done, but research actually shows that the people that are the most productive are the people that take more breaks. 17 minutes for every 52 minutes. Okay,
Wow.
that's a lot of
Yeah.
breaks, right?
You're right.
So really breaking up your day in chunks rather than just kind of a marathon of doing different things, and make sure you take your lunch hour. I know that's so
Mhm.
simple, but take that lunch hour because your productivity depends on it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting that I got later in my career when I started to really value through learning the importance of more balance and harmony between work and living, sleeping, as well. One of the things I think I got more business done, more decisions, and I was accountable for thousands of people. I got more key decisions made in the coffee shop and on breaks than I did in the boardroom and the office. And it was very clear, big decisions that would impact a country, a country's the number of employees that would be working for the particular country over the next 2 to 3 years. Those kinds of decisions would be made in a coffee shop where you get out of the environment. You've done intense work, a lot of data gathering, and then you go for a walk and you go and you just informally, casually talk with somebody, right? Over tea. Okay. Go for afternoon tea. These kinds of things. And you're right. These things are missing today in the pandemic, or have been missing in the pandemic era economy. So we have to replace that. And I think you've offered some great suggestions around that. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you
great.
for that.
Um, I got another question here. What should I do if I'm worried about my mental health? So let's say that we don't have family members around the person, but let's say that somebody's watching this and they know that something's wrong and that they just don't quite feel right. How do they know where to go? What should they do in your opinion? They could be working in I'll just pick my network in Zambia, they could be in Taiwan, they could be in Korea, in anywhere in the world. What should they do?
So the first thing is I would start with reflection.
Hmm.
What is it that you notice that isn't, how it used to be? Because there are different therapists out there that specialize in different domains. So if you take the time to just write down what's been going on, and reach out to your local resource center, because we have different services in our community, but we might not know it. Right. So if you can reach out to your local community, they can actually connect your resource center, to the different
Mm.
services that are in your local area. And if you are having a challenge with that, the good news with the pandemic is that it's made resources so much more accessible. So you can go
Mm.
on Google and search therapists in your local area and interview them. Don't just settle with the first person you meet. Act as if
Mm.
this is a job. You want to hire
Right.
the best fit, right? So take the
Hmm.
time to ask, what what can you do for me? What is your style of treatment? Okay, things like that. And then
Right.
explore that. And if you're not at the step of getting the support professionally, then I would say talk to someone that is in your circle. Because when you talk to someone in your circle, then they might have access to something you might not know. But just don't keep it to yourself.
Right. So I think that the main point here is that if many people watching this might be living in a country that does not have deep resources in this space, and if you are in that situation, find somebody to talk about it. That's what Vergie is saying right now. Don't keep it bottled up inside and let it make you sick, and because it will get worse before it gets better. If you take that approach, you've got to have a way to vent and find, and everybody's got a circle around them of people that they trust. And if that circle's not wide enough, that's something that you should work on. And because you can use that circle for a lot of different things in life as well, right? So
Yeah. And
yeah,
there's lots of resources online as well.
lots of
If you're
resources online. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're struggling within the workplace with your mental health, there's Workplace Ontario, but this is someplace here,
Hmm.
but there's different resources. So don't be afraid to do some research and see what you can find. But I do agree that talking and not keeping it to yourself is the first step.
Yeah, and I think, between LinkedIn, YouTube, the resources are just almost unlimited now on so many different things. So if you are in those countries and the access to these services is not readily available, um, you've got the internet. Get resourceful, and you can find the help as well. Vergia, what's the best way for people to get hold of you? Tell us a little bit more specific as we start to wind down about your business and the types of people that you're helping. I know it's very broad, but what's the best way for them to reach you and for what?
So they can reach me on my LinkedIn. They can inbox me, Vergia Davidson, or they can reach me through my website, www.strivementalhealth.ca. So if you send an email, I'll definitely connect with you. And right now, I'm working with different organizations in terms of managers that want to have mentally healthy teams. So if you are a manager out there and you're noticing, okay, my team is struggling with various mental health issues, whether it's anxiety, stress, or they're not
Mm-hmm.
able to work together, or there's a traumatic event that happened, or burnout, or whatever it is, this is where I come in, where I will come and train the team on what to expect, what are the practical tools you can use. And then also, if you're an organization that is maybe a medium organization, you don't really have a specific framework in mind in terms of mental health. This is where I will meet with your leadership team and we'll sit down and I get to understand your work culture. And then we strategize and we create a framework. So then your employees, if they at least have this guideline, they can really promote positive mental health. And the next few months, I'm really hoping to launch a new program just for managers that they can do it in their own time and they can really get the support one-on-one when they need it. So I'm looking forward to launching that one soon.
So you do what you just described virtually, as what you can do it virtually. Yeah. And geographically, are you global? Where's your focus?
Yes, right now my focus is in Canada, but I've definitely worked outside of Canada to help support different organizations, because mental health is so important. Some countries, they have a lot more resources than others, and some they're developing the resources. So I'm really flexible and really open to work with whoever wants to have the support.
So if we've got a company in Singapore, for example, and they would like one of your programs, then you can work them into the scope.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, great. So my friends in Singapore, you've heard it right here. So so you now reach out to Vergia to for her services if you need if you feel that you need them. So Vergia, any parting advice? One thing I would like to ask you just before we sign off here is about women. I have mostly women on the program, and as I had throughout my career, I elevated a lot of women. Part of my legacy was actually elevating women into leadership positions in different countries. And do you have a view on any specific advice for women that are performing well, working themselves up the ranks, but they're a bit shy to actually apply for higher positions, executive type of roles? Any just general advice for women in this situation?
Yes, I say hire a professional. If you have the resources to do so, hire, because they can bring things out of you that maybe you might not be aware of. They might see your skill set and then send it back to you, and you're like, whoa, this is amazing, and they can coach you. They can coach you to what to say and the key words to include in your resume, so you can get seen and really stand up above the rest. So I would say, don't be afraid to access help. If money is an issue, I would say definitely that online, there's so many different resources, and don't be afraid to face that fear. And I don't know who said it, but someone said behind the fear is a door to opportunities, right? So address that fear. What's the fear for you? Ask yourself,
Right.
what am I worried about? What's the worst thing that could happen? And sometimes it's not as bad as we think.
That's very true. For the audience, Vergia and I actually met on a live stream that Vergia was another guest on, of Lisa Appia, and Lisa helps people. This is what she does. She will help people to condition themselves to go for that promotion and to go for that advancement. And there are very specific, it's almost, she's got it down to a science, and it's very precise. And so again, Lisa Appia, I'll put this in the links as well. You should connect with her, look into what she does. It's a great example of what Vergia is talking about, that expertise is out there on the internet, in this case on LinkedIn, to help people in this particular space. So regardless of that, there's probably a resource out there to help you with whatever you're wanting to do. So, it's not just for women as well. So I think that's great. Vergia, I'd like to thank you. We're about out of time, and really appreciate, I learned a lot. Forrest just made a comment and said that your point around mentorship, he agreed with me that we've always looked at this through a corporate lens, but never through a life lens. And that's a big learning for us today, but so many other great learnings that you presented in this discussion. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to having you back here again someday. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much